was just trying to standardize some type of submission, because you're gonna have other requests.
Well, what I'm saying is, though, any engineering thing, Dennis, is you have what they call a critical path.
Sure.
Which is you start at day one, and I'm gonna build a chemical plant. Well, I've got to get my permits to do this, I've got to order my materials to do this, they're going to come in on this date, and you do things multitasking toward that end date. So if the pumps don't come in on this date, or the union goes on strike here, you go out this way. And so, in essence, then, there's 4 rational reasons why you're not going to meet the end date. So it's that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and I think that's standard in the industry. From an engineering perspective, and so I should think every applicant's going to, when someone invests in a property, say, well, how soon can I put a shovel in the ground to have it? I should think, so that's. I think if it's just verbal as a.
Well, what's be verbal? I was just trying to standardize. So again, because you're going to have a few of these. With all due respect, I think we have another one on
5 or something.
Yeah, we have another one on tonight.
Yeah.
So the only thing is that the manufacturer controls their own destiny.
No, they don't.
Well, in some sense they do.
Well,
where people.
No, you have to depend on the government to get your permits, and I mean, if you're going to build a new warehouse. You have to go through all this planning process with your local government, then you got to order materials, you got to go out for bids, you got to, and so I think each one of these applicants has got a critical path schedule that was presented to somebody at some point in time so they can stay in business. That's what I want to say. But that's just, again, going back on my knowledge of how it's supposed to work anyway.
Us union guys would never hold up accountable.
I know that. I wouldn't even say that. We had a union strike one time, and I was the project manager.
Don't move along because people are dependent on other people making decisions.
Absolutely, and that's what we have to make, and that's what we have to put in our decision making.
But I like to see where it happened.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you can agree to do that, then Steve, appreciate it.
Hey, Steve, I think Dennis said something about the first of the year. If you can get it sooner, it gives us more time to look at it.
Yeah, we have it.
Yeah.
All right, because, I'm not doing nothing between now and Christmas.
Right, and plus, based upon your target dates for your schedule next year, we would meet on January 11 and 14. So there'll be 2 meetings prior to any concern or danger of expiration.
I'm just wondering at this stage and this far along, what would take another year and a half to get approval? I'm just, the length of time.
Bill, you weren't here Monday night?
Yeah.
Can I give you 5 minutes of, I gave you some examples of where we are from, where we started to where we are.
I will review that with
me, Steve.
but I think all those things that we're talking about are going to take 18 months to make a decision on. But that's why
Mr. Supervisor,
Yes.
I respectfully, I hear what you're saying.
Right.
I hate to say this, but I can ask this gentleman to my right.
Listen, I'm telling you, I want to look at the critical path when you put things in. It's very easy for you to sit there and say, well, you didn't do. But I'm telling you, if I can look at that critical path when you initiated the action, these multitasks, we see where it's at, we'll have an understanding of what we're going to expect. I think you've got a very good question. 18 months, why? Based on what rationale? Information will lead us to that answer. Okay. Now, a builder can say, well, you know what? I'm out of money right now. I'm going to wait 20 months before I put it back in. Well, I don't know that. And a lot of those kinds of things have been going on. It's not all been the planning board sitting on their hands or some Department of Health or somebody else. There's 2 sides to this, and I want to know what that is, as I think the board, and lead them through the process to come up with the right answer. Not who's right, but what's right.
Well,
okay.
We're on,
the fair answer.
This application is the heritage. And, Mr. Walker and Roger Mumford were here with me Monday night.
Right.
And, they're the only ones, they're one of the few guys that are building through this period of time.
I think you're gonna get a satisfactory answer. We just got to base it on fact versus.
It could very well be in seconds
opinion.
also. No one say that there can't be any segments of...
I just want to
Yeah.
acknowledge this.
You give us
Information is
reasonable?
Yeah.
Also, so the board's aware, under
Not a
your,
problem.
the code amendment, you can do it by simple resolution.
Yeah.
And you can, and it's, within your discretion, and it can be further extensions, depending on the circumstances.
And I'm telling you, the town board, when we got to this point with that local law, we saw the plight that people were in, and we want to see these applicants proceed on
Absolutely.
and do it. I mean, I wouldn't say we didn't have to do that, I'm glad we did it. There was a lot of discussion about that. So we're in your corner, we are not the enemy, but we want to base it on good information. Okay,
Not a problem.
good, thank you. Okay, Mr. Sweeney.
Yeah, that's me. Frascus. Not unlike what you've just been talking about, but at the same time, quite dissimilar. This is one of those that falls within the time frames that you've been talking about, that it was carved out originally.
Well, can you give Mr. Sweeney the
Yeah.
mic? This is how we record all
It goes
this.
into the minutes. Yes.
Okay, so this is not unlike what you have been talking about with regard to heritage, but it is. It has a distinctly different characteristic about it. It is a carved out, to use a phrase, project that had preliminary approval and was carved out from the rezoning and was allowed to proceed on renewal applications. And it reached a point where the renewals are in your court at this point at the, and Steve says, I thought it was the 14th, this is January 23rd, I guess it is. What has happened here is a lot more specific than occurred in Heritage, in the sense that since the approvals were had at the planning board level, the preliminary approvals were had, and since the completion of the environmental review process, there has come to light through various sources the probability, that's not the right word, the possibility of the cricket frog on the property, or at least within the areas of the property that will be developed. This is a 38-lot subdivision on a much larger piece of property, so there's going to be a lot of area that is not developed. So we've got to look at that, because if there is a cricket frog out there, there's no question we have to address it one way or the other. If there's habitat, if there's a real frog, we've got to address it. If there's habitat, we have to address it as well, and mitigate if it's on the areas or in the areas where there's going to be disturbance. There's no question about that. That's the way it is, cricket frog or no. So what we have to do is do cricket frog testing. Cricket frogs don't come alive until the spring. They don't show up, they don't poke their heads up until the spring. And you can't do that kind of testing until the spring. And I'm not sure the exact window, but I think it's May and June. And we can't even really address the issues that have been brought forth. As legitimate as they may be, we can't do that until that time. And then it's going to take time of doing the actual testing and some analysis of what we find, one way or the other. And if we find something that's not good, in terms of what we've proposed, we're going to have to ameliorate it or redesign or do something. If we find that it doesn't affect us, we can report that as well. But all of that's going to take time. So what I'm here is to ask you for an extension of that approval process, that preliminary approval process, which has now been cast in your ball court, for about 8 months, so that we can get a handle on the cricket frog. And that's pretty much what it is. But I do say, and I appreciate the supervisor's comments, that at some point, all of you are going to have to address a much more philosophical problem of what people are going to do in this economy if it continues in this economy, whether they want to put these projects on the shelf or not. But that's not tonight. That's later on. This is a cricket frog problem. And now, may I have the wrong words? I have conditional final approval. What kind of approval do we have? It's a preliminary.
Yeah, preliminary.
Yeah, preliminary. It's not a conditional final.
Correct.
It's conditional preliminary.
Preliminary.
Well, conditional preliminary.
Well, yes, if you want to call it that.
I love all these terms. Conditional preliminary. That's a town of Goshen specialty.
That's one I'm not even familiar with. When was that granted?
About 8, 9, 10 months ago.
Well, the initial preliminary resolution was adopted on October 30. Date of signature was October 30, 2007.
All right, so we've been hanging around. Well, I won't say there's been no activity. There's been activity.
In their favor, there are only 7 conditions to that approval.
Yeah. But I'm not concerned about those conditions. I'm concerned about this thing that just popped up, the cricket frog.
When did that pop up?
Oh, Neil, when did it pop up?
I was gonna say roughly 3-4 months ago.
Yeah.
How long what's the history on that particular parcel?
It was just known to the town. The town learned about it the first time about 3 or 4 months ago.
Anybody else know about it?
DEC knew about it since 2000, 2002.
But we had a draft environmental impacts final that was passed on by the planning board that said, no dice, no problem. Now, Neil has brought, well, it's not only Neil, but other people have said, well, maybe that's not true. So we got to deal with it. Okay. And I need the time to deal with it. That's all I'm asking for.
Sure. 8 months.
Can you do it in 8 months?
I hope.